Hello, in this video I will do a walkthrough of the oral exam study guide. Then I will do a practice oral exam so you can see the process. On Canvas there's an oral exam section or module. It's in step 5. Okay, so it's listed as step 5 and it's listed after the final, but really the oral exam could be taken at any time after you pass post-test 8 because at post-test 8, then you would have covered everything you need to cover. Okay, so for the oral exam, there are 3 things that you're going to get tested on. One are the multiplication facts. Number 2 are divisibility rules. And number 3 are the prime numbers. And we go over the prime numbers in section 2.3, which is going to be on post-test 8. So that's why anytime after post-test 8, you can take the oral exam. You don't have to wait till the end after the final to take it. Okay, just so you know, you can take it anytime that you're ready after post-test 8. All right, so let's take a look here and see what we have. This first page has a bunch of information here. It's pretty detailed. Here I explained why I had to have this oral exam, right? What's the purpose of it? So you can read over that. What means the rules? What are the rules of the oral exam? You can read over that. How it's going to be done. Of course, there's a difference between an online class and an in-person class. It's going to be a different process, of course, so read over that. And how you can prepare for the oral exam. And that's really the purpose of the video today, is to show you how to prepare. And that's going to be done here in the oral exam study guide. So I'll come back to this in a minute. This link down here is just a copy of the oral exam test sheet itself. And we'll go over this. It's part of the packet for the oral exam study guide. It's part of that. So we'll go over it in there. All right. So if you go down to the next link, this is the video that you're looking at here. Okay. That's this video. And this oral exam entry is a placeholder entry where I can put your grade on Canvas. Okay. So if you click it, nothing really happens, but it's a placeholder so I can enter your grade on Canvas. All right. So let's go back to the study guide. Okay. So here's what the oral exam study guide looks like. So this first page here lists some good information on how to prepare for the multiplication facts, divisibility rules, prime numbers. It also references the oral exam test sheet, which we'll look at later, and some study strategies, which we'll also look at. So if we scroll down to the first section, which is the multiplication facts. Now, whichever multiplication facts cells you see highlighted are the ones that I'm going to cover on the exam. All right. And the reason for that is because they're the most difficult ones. These other ones that are not highlighted, they're not as difficult. So this is, for example, the tens. 10 times 5 is 50. 11 times 6 is 66. Fairly easy, right? Whereas 7 times 8 is 56. Not so easy. 9 times 7 is 63. Not so easy. So I'm going to focus on the ones that I highlighted in yellow for the multiplication facts. And as far as divisibility rules go, there are 5 numbers we're going to look at. The number 2, 3, 5, 9, and 10. All right. And this should look familiar because this handout was also available to you in the division section 1.5. Same one that I'm using here. And then finally, we have the prime numbers. And you only have to know between 2 and 47. You have to memorize these. Okay, the ones that are highlighted are the ones that I would ask from. I will not ask you about other ones. And then finally, if you go down to the last section, we're looking at the oral exam test sheet itself. This is what it looks like. Okay, that's the back side here. All right, so why don't we just start from the top and go down. All right, so as I said, I'm going to ask you the most difficult multiplication facts. That's typically what I'll do. Now, you might say, wow, that's going to be very hard, but recall that you only need to know half of the multiplication table, right? Because of the commutative property of multiplication. 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. Okay, recall that. And one way to memorize the multiplication facts is to maybe do it in this order. Start with the easiest one, 2, then go to the 10s, the 11s, 5s, 3s, 4, 9, 6, 7, 8, and 12. Let's face it, these are the hard ones, aren't they? Right? Yeah. Yeah. And 9 isn't as bad as it looks. If you watch my multiplication facts strategies video, I go over the reasons why 9 isn't as bad as it looks. But yeah, these are fairly difficult, and no doubt 12 is the hardest one. It is. All right, and then like I said, for this, number 9, there are patterns. There are patterns, and I won't go into that into this video. You have to watch my video on the multiplication facts. There are patterns to the multiplication facts table. And that includes securing beachheads. Again, I'm not going to go over that here. Watch my other video to see. It's in section 1, multiplication facts video. Okay, if you go into that section, you'll see it. It's called multiplication facts strategies. All right, so divisibility rules. Now, this is not as bad as it looks because the rules for 2, 5, and 10, they're pretty easy, aren't they? And we'll go over it in a minute. They're not that difficult. Plus, the rules for 3 and 9 have the same rule, right? It's the same rule for 3 and 9. So this isn't horrible, I don't think. Then we go down to prime numbers. So what is a prime number? Let's quickly define that. So a prime number has 2 different factors. And a factor is a number that multiplies with another number, right? That's what a factor is. So for example, 2 times 3 is 6. Well, 6 is the product, the answer, but 2 times 3 or 3 times 2, they're the factors. So for prime numbers, the only factors are 1 in itself, and they have to be different. So let's do an example here. Let's look at 17. Well, 17 is prime. It's a prime number because the only numbers that multiply together to give you 17 are 1 and 17. 4 times 4 is 16. 5 times 3 is 15. There's no other combination that will give you 17. That's what makes it a prime number. So a composite number has more than 2 factors. So let's take 6, for example. 6 is composite because 1 times 6 is 6, but also 3 times 2 is 6. So see, altogether you have 4 factors. You have more than 2. So if you have more than 2 factors, it's not a prime number. It's called composite number because you can break that down into more than 2 factors. Okay. Now the number 1 is one of those special cases. It's not prime and it's not composite because the factors are the same. 1 times 1 is 1. And the strict rule for prime number is they have to be 2 different factors, such as 1 times 3, 1 times 5. So 1 is neither. Okay. 2 is the only even prime number. And that is because 1 times 2 is 2, and there's no other combination of factors that will give you 2. So this qualifies as being a prime number because he has 2 different factors, itself and 1. So 2 is the only even prime number. That's a big help. So if you see an even number bigger than 2, it's not prime. It's composite, guaranteed. All right. Now, besides 2, all prime numbers are odd. Okay, besides 2, all other prime numbers are odd. See that? All prime numbers are odd. Odd meaning the one's place value is a 1, 3, 5, 7, or 9. Okay, that's what an odd number is. So that's a help. Now, don't get confused that with this. Not all odd numbers are prime. Not all odd numbers are prime. Let's go down a little bit and look at the multiplication facts table. Let's look at this right here. We have 27. That's odd, but guess what? 3 times 9 is 27. So just because a number is odd doesn't make it a prime number. In fact, they're everywhere. Look, 9 is odd, 3 times 3 is 9. 33 is odd, 11 times 3 is 33. 15 is odd, 3 times 5 is 15. Where's 21? 21 is odd, 3 times 7 is 21. So don't confuse odd as guaranteed to be prime. No, what I'm saying here is besides 2, all other prime numbers are odd. Okay, so it sounds like the same as this, but it's a different concept. So I want you to memorize all the prime numbers up to 47. 47. All right, so we'll take a look at the oral exam test sheet in a little bit, and you want to get familiar with that test sheet yourself because there's some other good information on that. So how should you study for this oral exam? Well, first of all, you have 60 seconds to answer 10 questions. So that gives you on average 6 seconds per question. Okay, so that's not as bad as it seems. So for example, if I asked you what is 6 times 8, you have 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 48. See that? So that's plenty of time to answer a question. Okay, so you should be able to do it less than that actually, but that's the maximum time on average. But like anything else, you have to get accuracy first, right? You got to get that down first before speed. Accuracy first and then speed. So I would recommend having study sessions in the morning, sometime in the middle of the day, and then in the evening. And when I mean study sessions, I don't mean extended, long-winded study sessions. No, quick hits of studying. 15 to 30 minutes. Because after that, really your brain starts going, mush, right? How often, how much, how long can you sit there and look at a list of prime numbers before your mind starts wandering off? So that's why you want to do it in chunks. Chunk it up a few times a day. All right, so you want to continue to do that up until the day of the oral exam. All right, so let's go down a little bit and see what we have. And as I said earlier, the yellow ones are the ones I'm going to probably ask you. And recall that this gray horizontal line, stripe, whatever you want to call it, shaded area, splits the top right with the bottom left. So all you got to do is know half of the table. And I mentioned this before. on a different video, right? The multiplication facts strategies video. So watch that to get more information on that. So this is not as bad as it seems. All you got to really do know is know maybe what, 20 facts here, something like that. 20, 25 facts perhaps. If you just look at this big area down here. Okay, so not too bad. Divisibility rules. Okay, now I do have a video on divisibility rules, but let's quickly look at this again. And what you might want to do here is have an order of priority. So when I ask you, for example, is the number 10, what is it divisible by? Well, you have options here. You could say 10 itself, you could say 5, or you could say 2. So that wouldn't be too difficult. But if I said, what, let's say 54 is divisible by what, then it's not as easy. It's not as easy. So then you should have some kind of priority in your head. And what I would do is I would just simply go down the list, but start with the easy ones. In your mind, think 2. Is 54 even? Well, actually it is, because the ones place value ends in one of these, ends in 4, which makes it even, which means then 2 divides into it evenly with no remainder. And that's what divisibility is, right? Divisibility is some number, whatever the number is, some number that is divided by another number evenly with no remainder. That's what it means for a number to be divisible. All right, so I would start with the order I'm thinking of. You would start in your head. Okay, does the number 2 apply for divisibility for whatever number I give you? Then go to the next easiest one. Does the number 5 apply? For the number 5, if a number ends in 0 or 5, 5 goes into it. Go to the next easiest one, 10. Does 10 apply? Well, a number is divisible by 10 if its ones digit is 0. If it ends in 0, 10 goes into it, right? So that's pretty straightforward. If none of those match, then go back and think of 3. Now, 3 and 9 have the same rule, but I would look at 3 first. For the number 3, we're looking at the sum of the digits, right? So let's take a look over here, for example. 609. Is 609 divisible by 3? Well, it says here to add up the digits. Let's do that. 6 plus 0 is 6. 6 plus 9 is 15. Does 3 divide into 15 evenly with no remainder? And the answer is yes. So if 3 divides into the sum of the digits, 15, then guess what? 3 automatically divides into the original number without using long division. And that's the purpose of divisibility. A quick way to determine if one number divides into another number evenly with no remainder. All right, so that would be next. Finally, if 3 doesn't work, then you can try 9, and 9 has the same rule. All right, so that's divisibility there. Now let's go down to prime numbers. And as I said earlier, you want to memorize between all of these 2 through 47. So let's take a look at the prime numbers here. Now, when you look at these, especially the ones from 13 to 47, do they not look kind of strange, right? These numbers, they look kind of strange. What is it about these numbers that just don't look right? They don't look familiar. Do you know why? Well, actually, let's find out why. These numbers, are they in the multiplication facts table? Should those numbers be in the multiplication facts table? And the answer is no. So let's take a look at 17, for example. Is 17 in the multiplication facts table? Well, I see a 16, I see an 18, I see another 18, I see a 15. No. Well, the reason is because it's a prime number, right? It does nothing times nothing will give you 17, except 1 times 17. That's why these numbers here look strange, is because they're not in the multiplication table. We don't run across them here. These are in there only because we multiply by 1. That's why, right? 1 times 2 is 2. There's another one. There's one. There's a prime number. There's a prime number. There's a prime number. But that's because we're multiplying by 1. But besides 1, there's nothing else that would multiply to give you the prime number. And that's what makes it a prime number. So if you know your multiplication facts really well, that could help you here, right? That could help you. That could help you. 29. Well, let me think. What times what is 29? 3 times 10 is 30. 9 times 3 is 27. 4 times 7 is 28. I can't think of anything. Yeah, well, that's because 29 is a prime number. The only factors are 1 and 29. So you can use your knowledge of the multiplication facts table to help you here. Then you're kind of backing into the answer. However, my recommendation is just simply to purely memorize these. Just do it. It's going to be helpful, right? Then sit there trying to figure out if anything times anything is 47. It's going to take too long. Just simply commit this to memory and you can do it. All right, now let's go down a little bit and look at the next section, which is the oral exam itself. So you have 2 attempts to pass the oral exam. Okay, you have 2 attempts. Now I will give you an opportunity to do a practice oral exam. Okay, I will let you do that. So that way you can see how you will do on a real one that counts. Okay, so the practice oral exam is actually very helpful, and I would definitely take advantage of it if I were you. So that way you can get good feedback on how you did. Okay, if you did really well and you got the 80 that you need to pass this thing, well then maybe you should take the real one now since you're ready. If you don't get the 80 on the practice oral exam, well, then that means that you should go back and study whichever area you need to work on. So let's take a look at the instructions here. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to say the answer. And then I will write down your answer. You have a minute to answer 10 questions. And then you need to get 8 out of 10 correct, 80%. So let's take a look at all this stuff here, all this busy stuff. So what is all this? Well, the left side lists all the multiplication facts that I highlighted earlier, that I showed you. These are all the combinations of that. On the right side, you have divisibility rules. And right below it, we have prime numbers. So what I will do is this. Before we start the exam, I'm going to randomly pick 10 questions between all of these sections. 10 random questions. Okay, and so the questions could be distributed in any manner. So for example, I may ask you 6 multiplication facts, 2 divisibility rules, and 2 prime numbers for a total of 10. So I could do that, or any other combination, all right? So I'm going to have those questions checked off. That's what this pick is. I'm going to pick stuff before you see it, right? Before you see it. And then the test will begin, right? And then what this column here is, right here, I'm going to write down what you tell me. I'm going to write down what you tell me here. So I'll ask the question, what is 3 times 12? You'll say 36. I'll write 36 here, and so on and so on. Now, let's go over to divisibility rules. So what are all these blank areas? So here, I might ask you, what is the divisibility rule for the number 2? And here you would tell me if a number is even. So you don't have to say all this. See, there's a lot here for divisibility. I don't need you to memorize all the wording here. No, I probably couldn't do it either, right? It's too many words. So basically, get to the point. Even, right? For the number 2, even. If a number is even. So all you got to do here is tell me. So if I ask you, what is the divisibility for the number 2? All you got to say is if the number is even, and I get it. I know what you mean. You don't have to explain all that other stuff. I know what even means, and as long as you know that, then that means you know the rule. Let's go to 5 next. For the number 5, all you got to do is tell me if a number ends in 0 or 5. Done. I know what that means. For the number 10, all you got to say is if a number ends in 0. I know what you mean. Now, 3 and 9 have the same rule, right? Remember that? And all you got to do here is tell me sum of the digits or add the digits, add the numbers, something like that. I need to hear add. You got to add the digits. Okay. And that's all you got to tell me. And then I'll know that, okay, you understand the rule. So here I might ask you something like this: 475 is divisible by what and why? Then you would think to yourself, well, maybe I'll scan using those easy rules George told me before. Does 2 go into this? Like, remember I said that 2, 5, 10, 3, 9. Does 2 apply to here? No, because this is an odd number. Skip 2, go to 5. Does 5 apply? Well, yeah, because the number ends in 5, and the rule says if a number ends in 0, 5, 5 goes into it. So here, if I asked you, 475 is divisible by what? You would say 5. Then I'll ask you why, and you will say because it ends in 5. Okay? That's what this section is here. Now, I might ask you a number that's not listed here, and that's what this is. I might ask you some different number. Okay? I might ask you some different number. All right, now let's head down to the prime numbers. So this section here is basically a yes, no. These all are prime numbers, but I might ask you, is 31 prime? And what are you going to do? Say no or yes? So, whatever you say, I'm going to check it off here. And I'm going to grade this at the end. Down a little further, what is this section you're asking? Well, here I might ask you, give me a prime number between 20 and 29. You don't have to list all of them. Just tell me one. That's all. Give me a prime number between 20, 29, 23, or 29, right? Whatever it is. For all, that's what this means. Give me a prime number in that range. All right. So here I might ask you, is 27 prime? Yes or no? Generally, these are not prime, right? Hint, hint. I want to know that that just because it's odd doesn't make it prime number. Or I might ask you something else. That's what this is. All right. Now, so after you finish the test, after the test is over, I'm going to grade it. Now, here's how it looks. There's a key here. The C means correct. So if you get a question correct, I'll check it off as C, which means correct. I means incorrect. N means no answer. You did not answer it. Now, that brings up a point I want to make, and that is if you get stuck on a particular question, you can say skip or next. And what we'll do is I'll go to the next question, and if there's time at the end before the minute is up, we'll go back to the one you skipped. So I wouldn't waste too much time on one particular question. If you get stuck, just say skip. That way you can at least get the rest. And if there's time, we'll come back to it. Okay, so you can utilize that strategy. All right, so let's see, anything else here? So that's pretty much of the front page. And you should definitely look over this document here. All right, so let's look at the back side. So if you do not get an 80% score, you can do a retake, but not on the same day though. And the reason I have that stipulation is because how are you going to get better? Like if you take attempt one and you get a 60 and you say I want to do it again, well, if I allow you to do it again, how are you going to get better all of a sudden? Just magically? It takes time to memorize this stuff. So yeah, the retake is not permitted on the same day because I'm looking out for you actually. If I say, okay, go for it, then you fail twice, that's it, right? You need to pass this thing, right? You need to pass it. All right, so here I talked about the method already earlier. And then down here, yeah, so use this sheet actually for yourself to practice with somebody. It doesn't take long to do. It's only a minute, right? And the other person doesn't even have to know math. All they got to do is just be the tester, right? So grab some sheets of this or just write some down on your own blank piece of paper and then test yourself and see can you get consistently 80% or higher. If you do, well, guess what? Then you're ready, right? So these are the possible ways I might ask you questions, right? So get familiar with all of these. All right, so let's see, that's the end of that. All right, so that's pretty much what this document is. And if in an in-person class, I will hand this out to you. But in an online class, of course, I cannot hand it out. So you have to go to Canvas and download it. All right, so I think we might be ready to give this a shot. Let's do a practice oral exam. I'll do one so you can see the process. Okay, so for my online classes, this is typically what I'll do is I'll have a screenshot of the questions I will ask. For an in-person class, what I'll do obviously is to have a sheet of paper on my clipboard and then check off 10 questions. So, so this really applies to online, but also to in-person as far as the method I'll be using. So like I said, before I will start your testing, I'm going to randomly pick 10 questions. So I might say, okay, I'm going to check that one off. Might check that. Maybe that. Maybe that one. So we got 4, 5, 6. So 3 and 3, 6. And maybe I'll ask a couple from here. 1, 2. And then maybe a couple from here. 3 and perhaps 4. Right? So 6 and 4 is 10. So I would have these selected before I asked you the question. So that way you don't see me checking it. That way you don't have extra time. That's the purpose of it, right? So once I have these checked, we will begin. Okay. And so I'm going to play obviously the role of both the student and instructor, right? So we'll play that game and see what happens. And then at the end, I'm going to grade and see how I did. All right. So let's give it a shot and see how this plays out. Here's our timer. For in person, I'm going to use my cell phone's timer for a minute. Okay, for this one here, I'm going to use this timer. For online, I'm going to use this timer. All right, so let me get this thing started. So here we go. 3 times 8, 24. 5 times 6, 30. 6 times 7, and you say 44. 7 times 8, 56. 8 times 9, 72. 10 times 11, 110. What is the divisibility rule for the number 9? Add digits, you say. 51 is divisible by what? Y. Well, let's look at it real quick. 10, no. 2, no. 5, no. 3, well, add digits. 5 plus 1 is 6. Does 3 go into 6? Yeah. So it's divisible by 3. Why? Because the sum of the digits. That's why. It's 37 prime, and you say, no. A prime number between 20 and 29, and you say 23. We barely finished it, right? We barely finished it. So this is what I would write down, either on paper in person class or on this for online class. And then afterwards, I'll grade it. All right, so here we go. C means correct, incorrect, no answer. 3 times 8, 24. Correct. 5 times 6, 30. Correct. 6 times 7, 44. No, it's 42, George. Come on. 7 times 8 is 56. Correct. 8 times 9, 72. Correct. 10 times 11, 110. Correct. The divisibility rule for the number 9. Add digits, you said. Correct. 51 is divisible by 3. Why? Because you add the digits. Correct. Tough one. That's a tough one, but that's what it is. It's 37 prime, and you said no. Incorrect. 37 is prime, right? Give me a prime number between 20 and 29, and you said 23. Correct. All right, well, let's count up and see how you did. So, correct. Let's look at the correct column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yay. You got an 80%. Congratulations. You passed the oral exam. But you see how, so pretend this was a practice oral exam on your part. Do you see how I can give you some feedback? It shows that you know divisibility really well. You should study more prime numbers and probably a little bit more of multiplication facts. So that's why taking that practice oral exam is highly suggested, so you can see that feedback before the actual exam begins. All right, so hopefully this video helped you out in terms of coming to an understanding of what this oral exam is about and what this oral exam study guide, how it can help you. All right, well, thanks for watching, and let me know when you're ready for the oral exam.